Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard and welcome to Tournament Tactician, the premier tournament tier list for Legends of Runeterra. Patch 3.13 has dropped. It's the one that we will be playing the Forces from Beyond seasonal tournament on, which is just a week away. So this weekend is going to be the Last Chance Gauntlet as well as the Mastering Runeterra Open. I've had a couple of tournaments happen already on the patch that I've been able to look at and sort of curate the tier list based off of, but there's still a lot of unknown factors, and I'm going to be tying this in with the patch review that I did. If you didn't watch it, I don't really blame you. It's an hour long. I just kind of realized that's how I like to do those things. But I will be going over the tier list and sort of why everything is tiered where it is, the results that we have seen that impacted this, and maybe even bring up some of the things that I said during the patch review. And the first thing that I want to bring up is I had mentioned that if we moved into a control-dominated meta, which is where it looked like the patch was headed with no Jace-Heimer nerfs, then maybe Invoke could even be a top 5 deck by the time the season will happen. That was like the hot take that I threw out there. And I'm going to reel that one in, because I think there could have been a universe where that was true, but with players not having clear direction on what region combination is best for Invoke, what champion combination is best, it's not only impossible to get data on the deck right now to even know if we're headed in the right direction for something like that, but even if Invoke did turn into the anti-control deck that I thought it could be, there's just other known options that are going to take over given the limited time frame we have before the seasonal. If we had another 2 weeks, yeah, maybe Invoke would have popped up, maybe it wouldn't have, maybe Kai'Sa would have squashed that in its tracks, but I'm sort of reeling in the Invoke love that I had previously. It's not even on the tier list because I wouldn't know what version to put on here. All of the sample lists have been updated with either top Runeterra AR pilots or people that have already won a tournament on this patch, so if one of these lists looks a little weird and you see that it's been updated in the last 24 hours, it's not my list, somebody else's that they've been succeeding with. So might not be the quote-unquote standard list, but that's what somebody won with or has been performing well on ladder with. And when we talk about Invoke and we talk about good pilots of the deck who normally I would look to see what they're doing with it, you know, What Am I is a big name that comes to mind as sort of the Targon player. What Am I saw the patch drop and immediately shot to rank 1 with Kai'Sa Akshan. So obviously he's playing for seeding. Don't blame him for doing that, but there's just really no direction on Invoke right now. So we're going to push that one from our minds for now and sort of focus up on what we do know as we head into the seasonal. There's really just not enough time to refine Invoke, at least on a mass scale. Maybe 1 or 2 people will succeed with it, but for the most part, I'm going to be pushing it from my mind, as painful as that is. I'll still be playing it on ladder, but that's not relevant to this. So, control meta. Pretty obvious that's the direction we were headed. Jace-Heimer didn't receive any nerfs, was very good previously. Well, I guess Station Archivist got nerfed, but not everybody was big on Station Archivist. I think a 1 of in some decks. Nobody was really 3 Station Archivist in Jace-Heimer, as far as I remember, but definitely not now. So that deck's good. I don't really need to explain that one. If you need to know what this deck looks like, go watch the finals of the last seasonal. It's pretty familiar. FTR, a good Shadow Isle Freljord control deck. I don't know if this one's going to stick around. Jace-Heimer and Darkness are definitely the 2 control decks that everybody is the biggest on right now. I think Darkness is actually the #1 ladder deck for the time being in terms of play rate, and also has been performing in tournament. A lot of Jace-Heimer Darkness lineups coming out of this opening couple of days. TF Nami is a deck that I've been pushing even during the Kai'Sa meta, but didn't really have the results to back up, and now I do. TF Nami actually does pretty well against control because you kind of just get to sit back and forth with your opponent, play for the windows where if they play proactively, okay, I get to throw down one of my threats now, really play against their mana pool, and the good TF Nami pilots are definitely going to rise to the top on this patch, and it's something that you should definitely be keeping an eye on. And then Kai'Sa Demacia, not as dead as everybody had hoped it would be. I talked about this in the patch rundown where I was very afraid that this was going to be another one of those instances where we have this very oppressive feeling deck. It gets a slap on the wrist. It doesn't do enough, and it goes on to dominate the seasonal. That seems to be where we're landing on Kai'Sa. I've seen mixed opinions about it on Twitter from players that I respect in terms of like, okay, this deck is dead. No, this deck is very good. Okay, the deck is going to be dead for like 48 hours, and then everyone's going to remember it's very good, and we're going to go to that. But the general consensus seems to be leaning more and more towards Kai'Sa still very good the longer the patch goes on. So I definitely expect to see this pop up in tournaments with the same presence that it did on patch 3.12, which is to say in a given top 8, you're going to have 3 to 5 Kai'Sa decks, usually averaging out on 4. So that just kind of is what it is. We're all going to have to accept it. Learn to play Kai'Sa, learn to ban it, whatever you have to do. And because the tournament format is different than ladder, because we have the ability to ban Kai'Sa, it's really just going to be about, you know, what are these other decks that we're playing with. So if you ban Kai'Sa, you just say, okay, pretend this doesn't exist. Obviously, like, the level 1 of things is going to be these control lineups, like Jaysheimer, FTR, Darkness as an example. And then the level 2 is going to be the anti-control lineups, things where you're getting Zillion Echo, Sun Disc, Ziggs Talia, Twisted Fate Nami, Kai'Sa Demacia, from what I've been told, fits into that niche as well. And what the big question is going to be, what we're really looking to answer here in the Mastering Runeterra Open is, does the level 2 actually beat the level 1? Because Thralls was a big part of the level 2 lineup, level 2 here meaning anti-control, and they took some big hits. They haven't maintained the presence that they did after their first round of nerfs when Promising Future got effectively removed from the deck. So I had reservations about Thralls persisting through the nerfs that they got this time around. It looks like, at least for the opening couple of days, that seems to be a well-rounded and rooted in science fear of mine, that Thralls is just kind of out the window. Now, the big question that we're going to be running into is, where does aggro fit into all of this? Because it seems like we're actually in a pretty standard triangle meta, a healthy meta of, like, you've got your control, you've got your aggro, and you've got your anti-control. And, you control beats aggro, aggro beats anti-control, anti-control beats control. I'm not sure that's exactly how it's going to play out, because what I haven't been able to suss out so far is whether or not aggro is actually beating control. Aggro has won a tournament already, Control has won a tournament already, and Anti-Control has won a tournament already. But there's so much that happened this patch that we really are not going to have a phenomenal picture just from the opening days. We're probably not even going to have a great picture by the time the seasonal rolls around, but whoever has the best picture is going to succeed, and of course I'll do my best as always to try and help you paint that picture. That one will be out on Wednesday. But for now, it's kind of a wait-and-see approach. We know what's good. We know that everything's good. It's a matter of what's actually going to creep ahead. The control decks, in theory, should be the ones getting better as time goes on, as they have a better idea of the meta that they're going to be playing against and what sort of tech cards they should be putting in there. But the aggro decks are performing a lot better than they have for the last couple of seasons, with, Pirates getting an overhaul with the new 4LW Tentacle build, or at least 4LW is the one that I've seen pushing it the absolute most. Don't know if he is the originator of it, though it would not surprise me by any stretch of the imagination. Spider's getting a new Breath of Life with the Hallowed package. Annie Jin seems to be the go-to third deck for a lot of players, but there is always that Bandle Burn option coming back, especially with Nara receiving a couple of buffs. Katarina sort of fitting into that Bandle Burn deck a little bit better. Maybe we go back to, like, Shurima Noxus aggro, but I think that, like, triple Noxus aggro is definitely something you can expect to see at the seasonal and in this weekend. And it's been performing fine. Like I said, it's already won a tournament. What am I top 8 of the OLS with it on the previous patch? So it's really just, everything's good. Play to your preference and try to figure out what lineup you would enjoy playing the most. What decks do you hate losing to? Run that into the Mastering Runeterra Open this weekend and get a good idea of what your weaknesses were and things like that, because there's no clear standout strategy here. I think Kai'Sa has also won tournaments, so, like, wherever you want to fit this Kai'Sa in, I could see this being either... I mean, Kai'Sa, that's the beauty of Kai'Sa, right? Is you can really fit it into any lineup where you run 2 control decks in Kai'Sa, and you're like, hey, if we're playing control mirrors, you got to ban my Kai'Sa, and then I get to play, like, Darkness and Jaysheimer, or whatever control decks you feel are best into the mirror. If you want to run double aggro in Kai'Sa, yeah, that's also going to be absolutely fine. And again, if you want to run anti-control with Kai'Sa, which I believe is the lineup that we saw that Kai'Sa won with, it was like Kai'Sa, Sun Disc, and something, TF Nami maybe. I might even be misremembering that. We also saw Targon's Peak pop up again. Okay, yeah, it was Targon's Peak, Sun Disc, and something else, because it was this, like, anti-control lineup, which kind of makes sense, right? Control's not going to do well against the Peak. There's an Aurelion Soul coming down with Spell Shield. There's FTRs to deal with and things like that. Peak, I don't think, is going to stick around, but that is just something I kind of wanted to shout out as something that has had a performance so far in an event. But ultimately, there's just no clear breadwinner here on the opening weekend for me to really push on you. Control is what I would expect to be the most popular, and that is why you see it crowding tier 1. It's also what has had the most success in the 4 or 5 tournaments that we have seen, but I only get to see the deck list of the winners, so I don't know how the top 8 actually played out, or the top 4, or what have you. It could be that that was the only control in top 8 and the rest of the field is aggro, but I would have no way of knowing. So that we're just kind of level 1ing it right now, right? Where level 1 is control, level 2 is what beats control, level 3 is what beats that, and we're just going to have to figure out where we stand come the seasonal, which is why I'm actually worried about putting out the next Tournament Tactician on Wednesday. I'm worried that on Wednesday, we're all going to be at level 2, but then by Friday, everyone's going to be at level 3, and all of a sudden I will have misled you or something like that. But we'll cover that when the time comes. For now, unfortunately, not an insane amount of information that I could give you other than, like, Bartolawi has fallen off, Thralls have fallen off, Monkeys have pretty much fallen off. Ziggs Talia gets a little bit more back into it as we head into a control meta because Hourglass decks are very good against control. Again, the sample deck lists for all of these are in my link tree in the description below, and I'd implore you to take a look because there are actually some stark differences between all of the Kai'Sa builds. So if you're trying to figure out which one suits you the best, definitely go through those, kind of figure out what you want to do. The main thing, or the main difference rather, from last patch to this patch that I've noticed on the Kai'Sa specifically, is that a few players have dropped Hourglass entirely. That I don't think is going to stick around as the standard, but the main thing is that everybody is back on 3 Void Abomination. So if you were like, yeah, you know, Kai'Sa's finally dead, like Void Abomination still comes down with Spell Shield and, you know, Scout and Elusive and all these keywords and stuff. So that is still something that control players are going to have to deal with, which is why I don't think you necessarily need to be Kai'Sa Sivir in order to be control and get that higher presence of Spell Shield on your base units. I think the Void Abomination does a good enough job of shoring up that archetypal matchup that any Kai'Sa deck can go ahead and compete with Mono and Akshan now seeming to be the most popular, whereas last patch it was Mono and Sivir. So that's just something I wanted to point out for you. And other than that, again, all of these sample lists have been updated. You can click through them, figure out what you like, what you don't like. But that is going to do it for me for this week. Good luck to everybody on the opening weekend. I will be studying these results with a fine-tooth comb and trying to get you prepared for the seasonal. So look out for the next Tournament Tactician on Wednesday, when I will give you the seasonal edition for the Forces from Beyond event, and we'll try to figure out what actually is on top, what level we should be at, and all that. So thank you so much for watching. I've been Boulevard, and as always, good luck in your tournaments.